Please subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon for the future uploads. Namaste. In this video, we are going to deal with the topic of force or fraud implied by the opposite party. And this force or fraud directly amounts to nullifying the marriage. So basically this force or fraud is the ground to obtain the decree of nullity from the court. So let's see what this force or this fraud is all about and who should impose it first. Both force or fraud have to be before the marriage, operating at the time of obtaining consent to the marriage. Basically here, either it be force or it be fraud. Both of them should be operational at the time of marriage itself. So when the marriage is being solemnized and when the consent for the marriage that yes, we want to get married, that is obtained, that is the time when this force or this fraud has to be there. So this is the time when force or fraud, if applicable, then the relief of nullity is available to the parties. So this is the first part wherein both force as well as fraud has to be there at the time of marriage. Now we will see one by one about force and about fraud how it is. We will first deal with force. Force by the spouse or relative of the spouse to get married. Now here, as far as this force is concerned, this force has to be from the spouse who is going to get married. So here the force has to be from the spouse or her relative. Let's take an example. A is a boy and B is a girl who wants to get married. So here B should have force on A that get married with me, or the relatives of the B should have force upon A that please get married with B. The force should be from the other side and not from your own side. That is the first and foremost requirement. Here many a times I have seen cases where people come to me and they say that see, my parents have forced me in this marriage and therefore I have married. That is not the case here. The force to be operational should be from the side of the other party. Let's take an example. There is A and B. A is the husband, B is a girl, wants to get married here. Now the force should be from the B side on A or A side on B to be considered as force as a ground for nullity of marriage. If B side only is forcing B to get married with A, that will not count as force in terms of nullity. The words used are force from the respondent, and respondent is the opposite party against whom you are going to file the case. So you cannot come to the court and say that see, my parents have forced me and therefore I got married, now please dissolve the marriage. No, that will not work. The force should be from the other side. Now we will see about the fraud. Fraud by the spouse or relatives of the spouse pertaining to the material information about such person. Now here, as far as this fraud is concerned, this fraud also has to be from the opposite party and not from your side. Let's take one example again of that A and B. A is a boy, B is a girl, want to get married with each other. Now, as far as this A is concerned, he is working in municipal corporation as a peon, but it is portrayed to be that A is a businessman having well-established business in gold. Here the pertaining information about the financials of the boy were lied to the girl and then she gave consent to get married with this boy. So here the fraud which is operational is from the side of A on B, and then only we will say that it is a fraud. Now let's take another example. Same case, A is a boy, B is a girl. Here if the girl side has told the parents of the boy that see, this is the flaws in the girl, please consider them, but the parents have decided not to tell it to the boy. Here the fraud is played by the parents on the boy and not by the girl on the boy, and therefore we say here that it is not fraud. So fraud has to be played by the opposite party, one, and second scenario is that the fraud should be pertaining to the important information of that person. It may be financial information, it may be educational information, it may be past affairs of that person, or if that person is divorcee, then pertaining to that past of that person, or medical ailments about that person, or mental ailments about that person. So it may be something related to that person which is very much vital to this person. That can be considered as fraud, and then only we say that it is a fraud. Now, what will be the requirement and when to file this case in the court? Let's see about that. Petition has to be filed within 1 year from the discovery of fraud or force ceasing to operate. Here there is a limitation placed by the law itself, that is, as soon as the fraud is realized that this is the fraud which was played, or as soon as the force which was operational at the time of marriage ceases to operate, that now there is no force. From that moment onwards we count 1 year, and within that 1 year the person has to come to the court to file the petition in the court. Then and then only such petition for nullity can be entertained by the court. So this is the later part of the section which enables limitation upon the parties, that from the discovery of the fraud or the day force ceased to operate, from both these points we have to count 1 year within which a petition for nullity on the ground of fraud or force, as the case may be, has to be filed. There is one more condition which is there, which has to be seen by the parties, otherwise they will miserably fail to prove fraud or force. Let's see what is that. After discovery of fraud or force ceasing to operate, there was no physical relations or no condonation. This is very important. The day the person realizes that there was fraud, or the day there is no force on him anymore, from that day onwards he or she should not have voluntary physical intercourse with the spouse. What does it mean? That if he has physical relations with the spouse, that will mean that that person is ready to condone all the acts that have happened. So he has accepted the relationship, accepted the fraud and is ready to live with it, or he has accepted the force and is ready to live with that. There is no problem to him anymore. So there should be no condonation and there should be no physical relations between the parties after the discovery of fraud or after force ceasing to operate. All these things have to be mentioned in the petition. You have to mention in the petition that this was told before the marriage, then this came to the knowledge after the fraud was discovered. Thereafter there is no physical relations between the parties, no way it was condoned, therefore please grant nullity. Or as far as force is concerned, we have to state that when the marriage was to be solemnized, there was force to get solemnized the marriage. Thereafter this day the force ceased to operate, so I quit the marriage. So thereafter we did not have physical relations with each other, and therefore I want nullity of marriage because my consent to the marriage was not free. If this is pleaded properly in the petition, then only the court considers it. This is the topic about fraud or force. If you have liked the video, please give a thumbs up. Video on various topics are going to be uploaded on YouTube. Please subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon for the future uploads. Thank you.